Hello, and welcome to the Horror Hags.
We're back.
I'm Zach.
I'm Marco.
And this week we're talking about some blockbuster horrors. We're doing Insidious, The Conjuring,
And The Exorcist.
Yes, everybody knows The Exorcist. We wanted to do some bigger names this week just to give the audience a little bit more of a taste of what some blockbuster horrors might seem like.
Yeah, and what we think of them, more importantly.
I think these are going to be some more iconic films, especially the Insidious and Conjuring, for at least my generation, that'll go down to be talked about, like The Exorcist.
Right. And they're all, like, favorite movies of ours.
And everybody just seems to know those titles, you know. If you talk horror to like everybody, people know Insidious, people know The Conjuring because it had such an impact on people and it had such an impact on the general population.
Yes, people, we're talking commercial films. Don't hate us for that.
The Exorcist too. I mean, even someone like me knew of The Exorcist. I didn't really know of it before I watched it with Marco, but it was last night.
Right. Yep.
And it was just something that I always wanted to see, but I just knew of because it was that big of a film. It had that much of an impact on the horror industry.
Right, and listen, in my opinion, it's a masterpiece of horror.
It is.
And we'll talk about that later.
It is.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Insidious first.
Okay.
What did you like about Insidious?
I loved everything about Insidious. When I first saw it at the movies, because I'm a snob, my first reaction was PG-13 horror, no. But of course I went to see it. I went to see it with my friend Abe, and I loved it. I remember waiting in line to get in, and people coming out of the screening before ours, and the looks on their faces were kind of priceless. And we asked them, we were like, is it good? And people were like, it's really scary. So we were all excited going in.
I saw it right when it first came out. I saw it a few times. It came out when I was in college, and it scared the living hell out of me. I was so bothered by this film when it first came out, just because it deals with like dreaming and otherworldly personalities and crossing dimensions and all things that like I haven't really paid much thought to at the time, you know, and I haven't really explored that, and it really freaked me out the first time I watched it.
All right, now you have to tell me the truth.
Yes.
You were scared by Insidious.
Yes.
I have to admit I was a little scared too. But you weren't really scared, and again, we'll talk about this later, but you weren't really scared with The Exorcist, right?
I wasn't too scared.
All right.
Not too scared.
We'll get back to that.
Much more like creeped, but like at the same time, The Exorcist kind of... possession really doesn't get me as much as like that whole your soul is literally cross-traveling dimensions is what Insidious is more, you know?
For me, it was the other way around.
Yeah, really?
The possession gets me, maybe because I was brought up Catholic. I went to Catholic school all my life.
Right.
This travel to other worlds is sci-fi to me. It's not necessarily horror. So yeah.
The Conjuring probably must have hit you a little bit differently because that one has a possession in it as well.
It does. It didn't hit me differently, and we'll talk about that again. So it's interesting, the reactions.
Yeah.
After me saying what I just said. Okay. I'm just a ball of contradictions.
There's a point in this film where there's a face, and Insidious there's a red face, and like that is just imprinted in my mind forever. I will never forget the look of when I first saw it. I'll never forget how my body shivered when I first saw it because it was so unexpected.
Right.
It was so just thrown at you, and you weren't really expecting it at the moment in the film. And I remember when I first watched it, it just hit me like a brick wall. I feel like I just ran into something and I was shivering and like, ugh.
Right.
I couldn't feel the same after it. And that's when I really started being like, oh my God, what is happening? Where is this boy? He is lost. This is the thing that has him. Because throughout the whole movie, you're like, all right, Dalton's sleeping. Dalton's sleeping. Why is he sleeping?
Girl, I knew Dalton was not sleeping. Dalton was in another world somewhere.
Right, but Mr. Dad, who is he? Who is Mr. Dad?
The luscious Patrick Wilson. That's what I'm calling him from now on.
Marco loves this man.
I do.
I think he's hot. I just don't think, I don't know, his acting in Insidious bothered me just because if I was that wife, if I was her, and my husband told me to calm the hell down after I have scratches on my bed and a bloody handprint on my son's bed, and you're just telling me to calm down, we are done.
Okay, we're going to talk about this, right? Because I rewatched it. Mm-hmm. Like I'm supposed to do before our podcast.
Very good.
And I wrote down some notes, and they touch upon what you just said. So Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, who plays the wife, the way that it was filmed and the chemistry between them, they felt like a real family, right? And as things started happening that she was experiencing and he wasn't, simply because he didn't want to deal with it and he wasn't home,
Right.
it almost felt to me like she was having a mental breakdown, and
Absolutely.
this stuff wasn't necessarily real. So I think that's where he was coming from.
Right.
Not only was he a husband, and this is what husbands tend to do, don't hate, but I think he thought she was having some sort of emotional mental breakdown,
Right.
right? Until he saw,
Right, like the stress of just
Apparitions,
being in
right.
a family, the stress of day to day. He thought this was like the
well, and the stress of having their kid in what they thought at that time was a coma.
a coma.
Right.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a lot to go through. Not to mention she wasn't working, right? She was just working on her music.
She's,
You know, but
there's
she
nothing
wasn't.
wrong with that.
No, what I'm saying is like she's a stay-at-home mom and works
Right.
on her music. She's around it all day long, and that
Right,
has a
right.
toll on
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah.
She has no escape. She has nowhere to go. She's home all day.
Yeah, and this is, one of the things I wrote down is Renee, which is her Rose Byrne's character's name, is Renee having a breakdown, can't deal with Dalton in a coma. One thing too that I noted was how they used shadows and dark spaces in the movie to create fear,
Yes.
and they did that too in The Conjuring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same director.
Right, it is.
But in The Conjuring, right? Sorry. In Insidious, there's a point where our apparition specialist, what's her name? The older woman.
Oh, Lynn Shane is the actress. Yes.
Yes, when she comes and with her two crew, and they just kind of scout around the place, and they go into Dalton's room, she has one of them start to draw something
Right.
really, really, really like quickly and frantically, and she was scared herself. And when the camera pans to what they're looking at, so to say, it's just a black screen, and you as the audience member are sitting there for the first time, sitting there like, what is about to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to pop out? And nothing happens until
Right.
you see the drawing. And
Right,
You see
and-
what they're looking at.
And that's amazing use of the dark space
Right.
and suspense, and you trying to anticipate, are we going to see something or not?
Right. You're sitting, you're waiting.
By the way, I called the actress Lynn Shane, who plays Elise. It's Shay, Lynn Shay, who's wonderful, and I adore her.
Yes, and I think she's an iconic face in this series too, right? All the Insidious movies pretty much reference or have her in some aspect because she plays such a huge part in this film.
Yeah, and I think the fans love her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We see in this film a general progression of a possible takeover of the body, because that's the demon's goal, right? Was to take over Dalton and inhabit Dalton.
Yes.
And we see a slight progression of weird things happening around the house, strange beings getting close to Dalton, and even the mother. There's a little boy. Remember that scene where she's cleaning, doing some chores?
Yes, and I wrote that down. Tiptoe through the tulip scene is terrifying, is what I wrote. So this is when she plays, I think it's a classical piece, I
Yes,
forget.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden it turns into Tiptoe Through the Tulip by Tiny Tim,
Oh, we
which
love
is a
Tiny
bizarre song.
He also did SpongeBob too.
Tiny Tim did SpongeBob?
Yeah, Tiny Tim did a song in SpongeBob.
Oh, that makes sense to me
Yeah.
because he's so
It's
weird.
the ukulele, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that scene is terrifying. They have this little kid who's a ghost running around the house.
Now it's freaky. I don't know if you noticed, but in that scene, right before it starts, when she walks in the door, the little kid is already standing to the left of her coat.
Yes. Yes.
He's like hiding, and it's
Yeah.
like a little Easter egg for you to kind of look for the second time you watch it, maybe. And it was funny. I noticed him right away because he was just standing there ominously, waiting to just pop out at her. She did not notice him because she was like in the coats.
Right.
But later, he comes out. He's running around the house. He's in Dalton's room, and no one else sees her besides her. And that's when you can kind of see on her face, especially when he runs right in front of her, like, all hope is lost. I've given up. This is it. Like, I know I'm not crazy. I'm seeing things right in front of me.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, this is no knock on the actor who played that role, the kid, the scary apparition, but he has a really creepy face.
He does.
Yeah, it's probably
Well, he's
makeup.
supposed to.
It's
I'm
probably
glad.
makeup, right? Yeah, right.
I'm glad he was a little creepy.
And on IMDb, he is not listed. So I wonder who played him.
Something else that creeps me out about this movie, right, are all the subplots that they have going on, right? Because they have the overarching Dalton's getting possessed, right?
Yeah.
They also have the family of apparitions. You remember them? It's
Yeah.
like the family of 4, and they all, die. And,
Yeah.
they have that, and I think they explore that in later Insidious films too. I think.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because as I was watching it, I was like, oh, they have all of these almost characters, right?
They are.
And when they filmed Insidious, were they thinking of spin-offs?
I think so. I think they have a lot of subplots going on, right?
Yeah.
Like they have the family, like who are these people? Why are they important to us? But like watching it after seeing the other films, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It like not only makes sense, but it brings about like, oh, that's where that character comes from, or
Right.
like, oh, that. And James Wan, the guy who directed it, right? That's his name.
Yep.
Is famous for that, like, because he also does like the Conjuring series. He does like the Nun, and he does Annabelle, and those are also spin-offs.
The only thing is, like, when they were doing Insidious, I don't think they could have known that it was going to be this sort of phenomenon with so many spin-offs.
No, but that's why the characters
they
are
were
so
hoping.
ominous in the first one.
They were hoping.
Right. They were obviously
let's
hoping.
write some spin-off-y things just in
That are
case.
just creepy, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and if it didn't go anywhere, you could just dismiss it as a creepy scene in the movie,
Right.
But now, you could say, oh, this is this family from this and here, and this is why this makes sense. And he kind of did build like a universe around it,
Can we talk about the influences in Insidious, like the music at the beginning?
Oh, yeah.
I think that was an Exorcist-inspired music.
It was.
The strings.
You
I call it
pointed
the
that
strings.
out.
Yes. Zach calls the strings something more professional. What do you
Yes,
call them?
so
Zach?
I call it like very staccato strings, right? So staccato in music is something that's like sharp, quick, and it like hits you, and it's some usually high pitched staccato to get your head like reeling and spinning a little bit. The violins in Insidious are very, very similar to The Exorcist opening.
Yes,
and,
right.
and Marco pointed that out yesterday when we were watching The Exorcist. But Insidious itself, the musical cues in that movie are very, very well placed.
Yes.
Right?
And memorable.
And memorable,
Very
too.
memorable, yeah.
And they have, there's a piano part. They only play a few notes, but they record it in a way that they use it as a sound cue instead of music.
Right.
So there's like a couple low-end bass notes played on the piano when something scary happens,
Yeah.
or some drum hits happen when a ghost walks out, or the violin staccatos are going really crazy when you see something you're not supposed to, or not, scary and jumps out at you.
Right.
Like the music cues in that are a driving force in that movie, I think.
If you haven't figured it out yet, Zach is a musician. So he notices these things more than I do.
I think music is a big part in horror, especially nowadays. You know?
Yeah. And I can't not mention that Patrick Wilson's mother in Insidious is played by the wonderful and fabulous Barbara Hershey. And we'll talk about The Conjuring in a minute, but I've noticed that these movies have these amazing female actors, right? Rose Byrne, I think, is amazing. Obviously she plays the mom. And then Barbara Hershey, for the older listeners, she's, a very well-respected actress.
Absolutely.
Who was in Beaches, non-horror, but I gotta mention it. Gay
Get
boy
it out,
movie.
girl, get it out.
So yeah, I mean, she's just wonderful.
Yeah.
So I was very pleased to see her in this.
I was surprised by the child actors in those movies too.
The who?
The kids. The Dalton's character, I think he played a great part. I think
But he's asleep the whole thing.
for half of it. But he also had to play possessed too. He was taken over by the red-faced demon, the man with
Right.
fire, right?
And I have to tell you, that red-faced demon, when he appeared in the movie for the first time, nobody was expecting it.
No.
I mean, I think people screamed when I saw it in the theater.
I did.
Yeah.
I still did. I
Yeah.
still get shivers when I see his face.
And that's one of the notes that I took. The devil makes an appearance.
And it's less scary when I see him later in the film because we're expecting to see him at that point.
Yeah.
But when his first appearance, because that's the first time we see it. We've heard about him all movie. We've
Yeah.
seen the drawings.
It's frightening.
We've seen what really creeped me out too was the pictures Dalton drew, because those are the pictures he saw when he was astral projecting. That's
Right.
the word they used.
That is the word they use.
It was astral projecting, when your body kind of leaves, or your soul kind of leaves your body at night and goes off and explores. And he's made contact with this guy plenty of times, because when you notice his room,
Yeah.
There's plenty of children's drawings of the man with the red face and like places he's gone or like visitors he's come across. And it's not until when your luscious man there.
I was just going to say, when luscious Patrick Wilson sees those, that's when he realizes we need an exorcism
her help.
or whatever. Yeah.
Right, we need her help.
Yeah. Excuse me while I take a sip of my wine. We're enjoying a sparkling rosé while we chat.
It's wonderful. We
Yes.
always try to enjoy ourselves when we do this.
Yes.
But it's interesting because when we find out that Mr. Luscious has been
Patrick Wilson.
astral projecting since he was a kid too.
Yeah.
His mom reveals that, and those concepts are later explored in different Insidiouses, right? Like later on. We also know that the apparition that was following him around was a ghost bride.
So the Black Bride.
Yes.
That was an influence. There's another influence. And I can't remember which Mario Bava film it is. I
Okay.
was researching it and I couldn't find it. But Mario Bava, I think I mentioned him in our first podcast. He's an Italian horror director from the 60s primarily, and 70s. And the Black Bride in Insidious was, I think, an homage
Okay.
or maybe an inspiration from a Mario Bava film.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
James Wan drew a lot of influences from a lot of different horrors when he made these, and these films were, I think, masterpieces of the last decade. You know,
Yeah.
like they were huge successes. Everybody knows them. Everybody loves them. So he definitely drew on older horrors to bring these movies to life, and that's important for people who are really about horror and really want to explore this like subgenre of films.
Yeah.
Is to know influences and know where things came from. So, good pick. Good find.
And the red door was very striking to me when they go to the further and they see the red door.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why it's very striking to me. Do you want to hear the story?
Yes, hit
Yeah.
me.
Okay.
Is this a trip down memory lane?
Not quite.
Oh.
I'm saving that for The Exorcist.
Fair.
So we see the red door, right? And the whole movie's scary. The movie ends. We leave the theater, my friend and I, and I'm walking home. I think I lived near the theater at that point, whatever. And I kid you not, there was somebody's house with a red light on in front of their door
Oh my gosh.
to the entrance. I had to take a picture and send it to my friend Abe, who was with me at that screening. And I'm like, you're not going to believe that I just saw this. Talk about creepy.
Oh my gosh.
And coincidences.
Well, one of my friends from high school, right? He used to scare the shit out of me because we would, do high school boy things and, drink and blah, 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 blah. And
Drink like we're doing now?
it was just like we're doing now, except a little bit more irresponsibly. He would look at me with that red man's face look, and it would just scare me still to this day. And he knew he could do it too. So
Did you see the movie with him?
I did.
You
Yeah.
did,
When the first time I watched it with him, and I shit my pants. And he
Ooh,
knows.
she's getting graphic.
Yes. What else can I say about Insidious? A lot of it was straightforward. James Wan is very about making you aware that you should be scared, right? That's his directing style. I feel like, hey, this is scary. Pay attention. This is scary. Pay attention.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of other horrors we covered are subtle horror that are supposed to creep you out. This is very like in your face. This is scary.
Yeah.
Holy
None of these three movies are subtle.
no.
We're talking
not at all.
Insidious, The Conjuring, and The Exorcist.
No.
Not
no.
subtle.
Not subtle horror, not like other content we've been talking about. This is very in-your-face horror.
Have we covered subtle horror?
With a little bit. I mean, as far as the other stuff.
Oh,
it's-
The Witch.
I mean, it's subtle. Very,
subtle,
very
yeah,
subtle,
yeah.
Whereas this, it's like, oh my god, here's an apparition. Here's a ghost. Here's
Right.
the devil. Here's the... And that brings us to the next movie,
Yeah, I was
which
going
I
to say,
think...
talk about non-subtle. That brings us to The Conjuring.
Oh, gosh. I think The Conjuring was a better film, in my opinion.
Really?
I think it was better.
Shock horror.
I was scared more by Insidious, but I think as a horror film, I think overall better, The Conjuring was better.
I'm sitting here in shock. Mouth wide open. You should see me, people. I'm just
I-
staring at Zach.
She's really bitter right now.
No, just surprised.
I just think that The Conjuring has a lot of build up to it, right? And yeah, you could argue Insidious does too, but The Conjuring has little things that make you stand on edge waiting to be scared. The clap game.
Things that make you go, ooh.
Things that make you go, oh my god, what's going to happen? Oh my god, is this the time? Oh my god, are they going to reveal? Oh my god. And the hide and clap is what they called it, right? Because they have 4 kids. They have 4 kids and husband and wife.
Wait, hold on. So let's back up.
Backing up.
So The Conjuring also has the luscious Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and they're playing Ed and Lorraine Warren,
Yes.
who were real life
They were real.
ghost hunters.
Yeah,
right?
the actual story.
Right. And this is where we get introduced to Annabelle for the very first time.
Right.
Is in The Conjuring. That's the first part of the movie.
Right.
Right?
And this is
then-
again drawing back to the setting up for sub-film.
Right, and it's setting up this whole universe,
Right.
the Conjuring universe,
Right.
right? So all these spin-offs. So yeah, he knew what he was doing.
He does.
Yeah, okay. So it starts off with Annabelle, and then it moves on to this couple played by Ron Livingston, who used to be in Sex and the City. I love him. He doesn't work enough. I want to see him in more movies. And Lily Taylor, who's another amazing female actor, right?
Yes.
So now this movie has Vera Farmiga, who's amazing, and Lily Taylor, who is a wonderful actor,
Yes.
right? So he kind of like brings on these like really strong female
Yeah.
actors,
he
which I
does.
appreciate, and the luscious Patrick Wilson.
This is the
All right,
second
I'll
time
stop.
he's used him.
I'll stop.
Second time he's used him too, which I'm like, wow, you got a thing for him,
I
don't
haven't
you?
used him.
No.
Oh, you mean James Wan? Okay.
Marco, you can if you want to.
I wish.
Well, we're brought into this family who moves into this new house with 4 kids. They all get to pick their rooms, you know, this and that. This very old, creepy house. And the first thing they do when they move in is they discover that they have a basement.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh my god, we have a basement, I guess, honey.
They didn't know.
They had no idea.
No.
It was all boarded up, and they didn't know why.
Why would you buy a house and not know there was a basement?
I don't even think the people who sold them knew because they bought it from the bank. Remember that? They bought it from the bank.
I do remember that. Did they not walk through the house?
Maybe not. I
No,
mean, it
okay.
was, what was it, 1971, I think.
People back then walked through their houses before they
I-
bought them.
I know.
Okay,
I know,
so
but
it's
I'm
a small
saying-
problem I have with the film. Okay.
So, 1971, they move into this house, and what we learn about it is it's on cursed lands. Right, we discover this later on in the film that the whole property, there's some 200 acres associated, was on cursed lands by this woman who sacrificed her baby to Satan.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
That's pretty cool.
it is cool.
I mean, not that people should do that.
no.
It's cool.
Highly
It's a
not
cool as a
recommended.
plot mechanism.
Do not recommend sacrificing your child to Satan.
No.
But, I mean, she did, right? And she said when she sacrificed him to Satan, as a big FU to God, anyone who takes my land will be cursed for eternity.
Right.
And so we slowly discover that they are not the first people who have ever tried to inhabit her land. Other people,
Right.
other poor souls have tried and inhabited it and were eventually killed off because the famous line, "She made me do it. She made me do it." All these ghosts started saying. And it took the mother a long time to figure out, oh my god, this woman made other women kill their children and then kill themselves. And it was like a whole ordeal.
Right. And now enter the poor schlubs, Ron Livingston and Lily Taylor,
and they-
moving into the house that they had no idea had a basement.
Right. And they keep complaining of a rotting smell. They keep complaining of, the children at least keep seeing apparitions. And then it takes a while for the mom, you know, when she starts playing hide and clap
Yeah.
with one of her kids, you know, it's just her and one of the kids.
That's
She notices that, like, she's following a clap that no one else is there.
Right. That's a really well executed scene.
Oh, my God.
Sequence, not scene, sequence, right? Because it's scary. Like, we know that the clap isn't coming from where it's supposed to be coming from.
Right.
And she has no idea because she's blindfolded.
I remember that was like
which
a
is
key selling point in the
Right.
advertisements.
Right, because then she goes to the basement,
Right.
the door locks, and then you see
Oh,
hands.
right behind her.
Okay, people, you can't see this obviously because you're listening, but Zach just jumped.
Yeah.
Okay, he's still scared.
Oh God, these movies get me. These movies get me just because
we love it.
ghosts freak me out.
Yeah.
Freak me out.
But you know what? So that basement scene is very creepy and effective. I wish they wouldn't have shown that in the trailer, but I guess you have to show something, right?
Yeah.
And when I just saw it recently the other day, I was taking my notes as usual, and I wrote "Haunting of kids creepy, pulling feet while asleep, sleepwalking, and banging head on armoire."
Oh, that poor
So
sleepwalker
all that
girl.
stuff was like intense.
It was.
right. So the little girl sleeping in the bed, and some invisible force pulls her feet.
Well, do you know why she was going to the clothing armoire? And
Oh,
why
this
she-
is the other girl.
Yes.
The one that sleepwalks. So
Yes, the
different
sleepwalk.
from the one that gets her feet pulled.
Right.
Right.
The sleepwalker.
So the sleepwalk. Why? Oh,
She is very close to one of the kid apparitions that
Yes.
were murdered there.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And if we find out later that the armoire, there's a secret little door opening.
Yes.
With a bunch of little trinkets, and that's where the kid used to hide from his mother.
Right.
Right. When she was trying to kill him,
So
and
he was-
eventually succeeded.
He was calling her to the armoire.
Right.
Yeah.
Because she found in there, first off, a little wind-up clown doll toy, and that's how she, communicated with him at first.
Yeah.
And then when she slept walk, that was him kind of pulling her body towards, answers.
His little hiding place.
Yeah.
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 And then later on in the film, when, everyone else discovers it, the mother gets pulled down to the basement from that armoire and almost really hurts herself.
Right.
And that's when we see the possession start to happening.
I did write better than I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when I first saw it in the movies, my expectations were probably a little too high, and I walked away a little unsatisfied, but still realizing that it was good, right? But now watching it again, I liked it more
Okay.
than the first time.
What did you find the first and second time about this movie, and what differences did you notice? And then what were some things that you didn't like about The Conjuring?
What didn't I like the first time, right?
Right.
It's not that I have to be clear. I did not like it the first time. I was a little underwhelmed, right? I don't know. I guess I was expecting too much, right? My hopes were really up high after Insidious and knowing James Wan was directing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I walked away liking it, but being like, well, whatever, And then I saw it this time, and I realized how effective it is.
It is.
Right? It's well executed. It's well filmed. He, James Wan, the director, he knows how to make a scary movie.
Yes.
Right? So those were things that I appreciated the second time that I wasn't thinking of the first time.
Right. And I mean, this movie also plays into the direct horror too. Like, when you're supposed to be scared. He has great musical cues in this one too.
Yes.
All of his scary projections and astral beings are scary. And there's a scene where the main ghost, the satanic lady who sacrificed her child,
Yeah.
is in the house and just starts puking into the mother's face, and that's like the start of her possession, because we see her with bruises, right, and she
Yes.
claims it as an iron deficiency when she knows what's happening.
Right.
She's just too embarrassed or to come forward about, yes, I'm being attacked at night by a ghost. Like, how do you just say that to somebody? But it's true, that's what's happening. It's grabbing hold of her, she's getting bruises and marks and grab marks.
Right.
And then eventually we see the scene where the mother is puking into the good mother's mouth, and like that's the way of starting the possession.
Right. Can we go back to an earlier scene?
Yeah.
So in Insidious, I talked about the use of shadows and darkness to create tension.
Yeah.
There's a great scene in The Conjuring where the two girls that share the bedroom, one of them wakes up and starts screaming because she sees somebody by
Yes.
the door. So
Yes.
the door is almost entirely open, but the way that it's filmed, there's light coming in through the opening space, and then there's shadow on the other side of the door.
Right.
So we're led to believe that this apparition that we can't see, but the little girl can see, is in the darkness.
And I've tried so hard to look to
There's
see if
nothing
maybe it
there.
was me.
No,
There's nothing
me too.
there.
There's nothing there.
You try to look so
Right.
hard for it, but that's his thing.
Right.
That's his thing, is that
and then
you guess.
the other girl wakes up and walks towards that dark space by the door, and I'm like,
And the other
on the
one's
edge of
like,
my
oh
seat.
my God, stop.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's right behind you.
Because the other girl doesn't see anything.
Right.
Just like the viewer, we don't see anything.
Ugh.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
It was.
That was well filmed, well done.
And then they also complain of the smell again, and then we later realize the smell is, something of a hint of a presence there, right? And then we also find out
I
through
guess
the
evil
Warrens.
stinks.
Yeah, it does. It just stink.
It stinks.
We find that the spirits also do this thing where at night the doors will slam, and they'll hit the wall in threes, and the Warrens tell us that's like a mocking to the Holy Trinity,
Right.
The
That's a good point that you mentioned the Holy Trinity. The Warrens, first of all, I've read many things about the Warrens. They were shysters, right? So they made a career out of doing this stuff like ghost hunting. But, I mean, they couldn't prove anything.
Right.
So yes, we're going to call them shysters, but the movie is very respectful towards them.
Oh, yeah.
The movies really kind of portray them as real ghost hunters, exorcists, whatever you want to
we
call
also
them.
see in the movie too them going to a house and investigating, and they're like, well, that's just the pipes, and they.
And that's what I
remember?
mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. They treat them very respectfully. So yeah, in this scene, they're like, yeah, there's no haunting here. There's nothing for us to do.
Right.
Right.
It's literally just the pipes at night. We've determined that there's no.
Oh,
But
good
when-
for the Warrens.
Good.
Until you start reading about them.
Honestly.
Oh, did I say that?
Ooh.
Am I talking shit about the Warrens?
Oop. We can't stir the pot. that
Excuse me
much.
while I take a sip of my wine.
Ah.
Okay. What else can we say about The Conjuring? Oh, the hair pulling scene. So, do you know what I'm talking about? So, there's a scene where.
The daughter gets pulled by her hair all through the
by an
house.
invisible force. That was pretty intense.
It was.
Yeah.
It
yeah,
was.
Yeah.
What do you think about the exorcism when they started performing that in the basement?
Yes, I wrote down.
Okay.
Exorcism scene is extremely intense, and it is. And then I wrote down totally committed performance by Lily Taylor, which I'm not surprised because I already said this. She's amazing, until she gets covered in a blanket, and then I'm like, wait, she's giving this like balls to the wall performance. I'm buying into this, and then they cover her with a blanket.
Well, it starts scary because like when you're watching, right, you're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And then she just spits out blood all over the blanket.
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
like, oh man, what's going on under there?
Right.
And then when he says, reveal yourself, we see the possessing spirit like come out a little bit and just peek its head out and then go back into the blanket.
Yeah.
And then the chair starts to float. And then we're like, oh, shit's getting real now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It was good. And did you realize that at the end there's a reference to the Amityville Horror?
Was there?
Yeah.
No, I missed it.
Yeah, so at the once everything is done and the Warrens have done their job and they go back home, Lorraine says to Ed, oh, we just got a phone call about I'm paraphrasing, but about a haunting on Long Island. And I'm sitting here going, oh, she's referring to the Amityville Horror, which is how they got famous, right? With that case. So.
And the Amityville Horror itself was an iconic film series, right? And that one people will remember forever and ever. And we will even cover it on the podcast.
I was just going to say, can we cover it one day, pretty please? Pretty please.
I think so.
Yes.
But I think,
and the sequels.
Oh my God, right?
Amityville Horror 2 is really sick and twisted. You'll love it.
Speaking of sequels, Insidious 3 is probably my favorite out of the Insidious series. But I do have to say The Conjuring is a little bit more oriented towards our next film.
Yes, and that's why we chose it.
Right. The Exorcist.
Retro.
This is Marco's
My
pick.
favorite.
So Marco, go ahead and tell us, especially us young users, what The Exorcist is all about. 'Cause
What does The Exorcist mean to me? Is that what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. So when I first saw The Exorcist, it was when it first aired on television. My mother, I remember, saw it when it came out in the movies. I was way too young.
Okay.
And I asked her if I could go, and she flat out said no. I was a little kid. I'm not going to tell you how old because then everybody will know how old I am. But no, I was a little kid, and she was like, "Absolutely not! You're not seeing this." So she went, and when she came back from the movies, I asked her again. So, what do you think? Can I go? She's like, "No." So years later, when it aired on television, I was like, "Okay, Mom, I'm watching it now," and she's like, "Fine." And the first time I saw it was on television.
Okay.
So it was an edited version.
I was gonna say, like, there's multiple versions of this movie out
Right,
there. We
right.
watched the unedited director's cut, right?
Yes. So
Which I think was the better of the three.
I don't know, to be honest with you. So the theatrical version obviously was edited for television.
Right.
I watched that version, and it was strong enough to
Right.
scare the hell out of me. Actually, I think we're ready for a trip down memory lane.
Uh-oh.
Trip down
Bing,
memory
bing, 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 bing,
lane.
bing.
Trip down memory lane. So I talked my mother into letting me see it on television, And it was my mom, my sister, and me. And I remember I insisted we all turn off the lights. So we watched it in the dark. I mean, I was a sick kid. Sick. We watched it in the dark. And then the first scene where Reagan, the girl who's possessed,
Right.
throws up, my sister immediately stood up from this couch and she said, I'm not watching it anymore.
I'm
I'm
done.
going to bed.
I'm
She
done.
was done. She was done. So she went to bed, and of course I had to soldier on. At the end of the movie, and we lived, back then we lived in the Bronx, and it was a huge 3-bedroom apartment, right? My sister had her bedroom, I had mine, and my parents had theirs. I went to my bedroom. I couldn't sleep. I was
bet.
so terrified.
'Cause this movie was still scary even when I watched it.
Yeah, but it was different back then, right? We had never seen anything like it.
I want to ask you, what was the public reaction to this movie? Because, I mean, horror was still just blossoming at
Wait, so I have to finish my trip down memory
Yes,
lane.
trip.
Please indulge me, people. Yeah, so I was so terrified I couldn't sleep, and I went to my mother's bedroom. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I went into her bedroom and I said to her, Mom, you have to sleep with me.
Oh, I'm
And
so
she did,
scared.
and she did, and she did. And that's how I finally got some sleep. But going to school the next day, everybody had seen it. Every single kid in my class had bags under their eyes. Okay, that's my trip down memory lane. Thank you
ask
for
again.
indulging me.
Let me
Yeah.
ask again.
Okay,
How was
go.
the public reaction to this movie?
People freaked out. So when it came out, obviously I was too young to remember, but reading the reports in later years, people were literally fainting,
Yeah.
vomiting in the theater. My mother, I remember this story very clearly because it made an impact on me. When my mother saw it, she said she went with her girlfriend, and there was a man sitting a few rows in front of her. And every time there was a scary scene, he would go back a row. Like, he would get up from his row and go back one row. And he kept doing that throughout the movie until he left. He did not finish the movie. My mother and her girlfriend did. She goes, the last time I saw him, he was moving one row behind us, and then he left. Because she turned back and he was gone. So people were, like, freaking out.
Let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people peg this movie and a couple other films as fueling the fire in the debate for mental illness. Do you agree?
That goes a little bit above my pay grade.
Do you think that's something?
No, I mean, I think that, listen, at the end of the day, it's a movie,
Right.
right? I think that for me personally, I think the reason I was so scared, I was raised a Catholic, right? And I went to Catholic school my entire life.
Right. I got confirmed. Yeah.
Yeah, you did too, right?
Sunday school.
Sunday school. Okay, well,
Right.
not really Catholic school.
Not on your level, but I mean,
Okay,
you and
yeah.
Jesus were like a thing.
Okay. Gotta love Jesus. Oh God, did I say that? No. Anyway, back to The Exorcist. Yeah, I mean, I think that the Catholicism that I was raised in had a lot to do with the fact that I was so scared, right? Because the devil's a thing
Right.
in Catholicism,
Right.
right? So I was scared out of my wits. Am I answering your question? I think I'm.
I think so.
Yeah?
I think so.
Okay.
Just because remember she had to go through a lot of testing, a lot of like.
Oh,
See
that's
I'm
what you're referring
saying?
to.
And like a
Yeah.
lot of like doctor visits. And mental illness, especially when the time it was released, wasn't really considered a whole push. Whereas nowadays we have a whole recognizing that yes, a mental illness is something that could debilitate
Yeah,
you.
and what Zach is referring to is in the film, Reagan, who's the little girl who gets possessed, at the beginning, like any normal person would do, is, her mother takes her to the doctor. Like, what is wrong with my daughter? She's acting weird. She's aggressive. She's cursing.
Right.
This is not normal behavior.
Right.
She pees in the middle of a party that she's
Right.
at, right? She pees on the floor. So that she's taken to the doctor. They're trying to figure out what's wrong with her.
They do a bunch of scans,
Right,
a bunch of tests.
right. I don't think it was a commentary on mental illness at all. I think William Friedkin, who's the director, knew, right, that this was a movie about demonic
Oh, sure,
possession.
sure.
But you had to kind of go through the motions,
Right.
right? Of like, we got to figure out what's wrong with this kid. You can't go right to exorcism,
Right.
right? Because
Exactly, 'cause
it was 1973 when it was released.
There's
Like,
nothing to compare it to.
well, in terms of trying to figure out what's wrong with her, Reagan, the child, back in we're in modern times. People don't do exorcisms, so I think that it was part of the film. I don't think it was a commentary on mental illness.
Got you.
Yeah,
I just wanted to ask your opinion on it.
and that's my opinion. I'm gonna take another sip of my wine.
Snap.
Snap.
So something interesting that I remember is when we were watching the director's version, right? You said that there's the face of the devil appeared more
Right.
than what was in the theatrical film. Now,
Yes.
I thought that was tasteful. I thought that seeing the actual demon that was possessing her a lot more throughout the film was beneficial to me as a watcher.
Yeah, so there's an image of a demon's face in the theatrical version. I think it appears only once. And then in the unrated director's cut, it appears twice, and that's what
3 times.
Zach is... 3 times, right. That's what Zach is referring to. I actually kind of liked that it only appeared once because it was jarring. I mean, this is a scary face.
Right, and this goes back to the Insidious face, too,
Yes.
right? You remember
Right.
that face. It's so iconic when it pops out.
And
you're
you,
like,
yes, and you said it
Right.
when we were talking about Insidious. You said I wasn't as scared of it later because
Right,
I
because
got
I
used
saw
to
it,
it. Right.
right.
I have the same opinion with The Exorcist.
Okay.
I would have preferred to have seen the demon's face once, because it would have it has more of an impact than seeing it 3 times.
okay.
Right.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, look, I've talked a lot about my reaction to The Exorcist. What was your reaction to The Exorcist, Zachary?
Okay, so right. When I saw it, I thought it helped only because, to me, I wasn't as alarmed when I saw it because I'm so exposed to so many newer, like Insidious, right? Like that face was so realistically CGI'd and placed with a mask and effects and so out there, right? But when The Exorcist came out, we didn't have a lot of that happening, and that
No.
face was so
It was new to
alarming.
audiences,
right?
yeah.
You see what I'm saying? We have a lot more technology to make us more scared. Is pretty much the shorter trail I'm walking on here.
Right. And then,
So seeing it more and more to me helped build the story.
yeah, listen, The Exorcist still scares me.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't as scared yesterday when we saw it. It was broad daylight,
Right.
even though it was evening, but
It's still.
yeah, it was still daylight.
Midsummer vibes.
Midsummer, right? Yeah, doesn't get dark until what 8:30.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I don't know. I mean, we can get into the whole debate about CGI versus practical effects,
Right.
and obviously in The Exorcist, filmed back in the 70s, it was all practical,
Right.
And again, we had never seen anything like it. So when you first saw that, it was a shock,
Right.
right?
I mean, the scene that really scared me the most out of The Exorcist, that's because I saw it when I was a kid too, and when I remember it was when her head spun all the way around, like 180 degrees, and then started mimicking them and yelling at them and puking on them. I mean, the whole thing was just obnoxious, especially when I was an 8-year-old. But you were saying something funny about when she took the cross and started stabbing herself.
Yeah.
Remember, that wasn't visible on TV.
I don't think so, and it couldn't have been. It's funny because I have to use the word transgressive, right? And some people may not agree with me because these are different times and we've seen so many things on the screen. But to me, that's a really transgressive scene. A 12-year-old girl
Right.
possessed by the devil or a demon, whatever you want to call it, is stabbing herself with a crucifix.
Right.
And saying things that I can't even say here.
Right, right, yeah.
She's basically masturbating with a crucifix.
Right.
So that's transgressive to me. It's still shocking. It still packs a punch. And I still think to myself, I can't believe they went there.
It was a shock value horror, right? It was so like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I can't believe this is actually happening. But something like that could still be used today too. I mean, I think that shock value horror filming tactic is still something that we see.
But you know what's funny? Like, the 70s was a really, in my opinion, a really a different time. It was like a golden age of movie making. Like, they used to get away with stuff back then that they would never be able to get away with now. I don't know if a movie was made, a mainstream film, right? Not an indie underground movie. A mainstream film, I don't think would be able to get away with that today.
It was vulgar.
Because Disney owns everything. Oh, did I say?
Oh,
That's another topic. That's another topic.
Another podcast, another
Yeah,
day.
but I don't think that filmmakers could get away with that today.
I mean, that would cause so much spark on the internet, right? And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. Because it was vile, it was disgusting. And there's a lot of stuff that did escape in the 70s that we just attribute to the times, and we just kind of let happen, especially in today's audience.
Yeah.
Because either A, we don't know about it, or B, we're more sensitive to those topics because there's a lot of social activism happening.
It's different times.
Yeah.
It's different times. And the fact that they used a 12-year-old actor, even though she had a body double, and a lot of the stronger scenes, if you will, were filmed with her body double.
Oh my God, do you remember that scene when she was crawling down the stairs?
Oh, the spider walk scene. Yeah. So that wasn't in the original theatrical version. In the unedited, the director's cut that we saw yesterday, there's a scene where Reagan, after being possessed, walks down a flight of stairs like a spider, but it's on her back. She walks on her back on all fours.
Right.
It's really creepy.
I think The Grudge, honestly, like it's very,
yeah.
very Grudge looking.
Yeah, it is actually. Now that you mention it, yeah. And that was taken away from the theatrical release because the effects weren't up to par even back then.
And you can tell it wasn't
And you can
her.
tell it wasn't her. You can
No.
tell there was a close up of her face, and she vomits blood.
Right.
I mean, on paper the scene is amazing, but
Right.
the execution wasn't there.
Like, I think the filming of it was good. I just don't think they should have used either her or tried to figure out
Yeah,
something.
and I was telling Zach yesterday, the reason they couldn't use Linda Blair, the actress who plays Reagan, is because there was no CGI back then. So in order for them to film the spider walk scene, again, somebody on their back on all fours, if you can picture that, walking down the stairs, they had to use a gymnast.
Right.
They couldn't use Linda Blair.
Right.
So they had a gymnast do it, and her face was in the shot. Right,
Right, and they couldn't avoid
and
that.
they couldn't superimpose. I guess they could have superimposed Linda Blair. No.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay, maybe.
not
I
sure.
don't know. Who knows? But they took it out for the theatrical,
Yes.
and they put it back in for. You actually gasped. I don't know if you realized that, but yesterday when we were watching
When she was coming down?
when she was doing during the spider
I
walk,
think because it was such a quick
Yeah.
transition.
Zach went
It was so quick. Like they were talking and then they turn around and there she is coming down. It was like
coming down the stairs like a spider.
Yeah, it made me jump a little bit.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching you do that.
What was hard for me during this film was the comparison of the beginning of the film to the end. I think it was a little stretched.
What do you mean?
When we have our archaeological explorer,
Oh yes.
find the statue and whatever, and it's not really well tied in. Like the only tie we have is like when the exorcism is happening, we see the statue in the background, and we're supposed to infer that the statue and the demon are somehow connected.
Right.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes. So what Zach is talking about is at the beginning of the scene. It's in Iraq, and the priest who later comes to do the exorcism, he's in Iraq doing archaeological dig. I think too much wine is playing a part here. Yeah. And he encounters this statue that kind of represents a demonic force.
Right.
And then, the movie shifts over to Georgetown, Washington, and the story plays out, right? And we all know the story. We don't have to rehash it here. But then at the end, this priest who comes from Iraq to Washington to do the exorcism, we don't really, as many times as I've seen the movie, I can't figure out what the tie-in is,
There's
right?
no tie-in.
Except for, and then what Zach is referring to, that statue that he sees in Iraq makes a quick appearance
At the
in the
end.
bedroom
Yeah.
of Reagan, who's possessed.
Right.
But it's kind of like it's almost like, it doesn't make an appearance. It's kind of like a mirage or
It's like
a vision. It's like a vision.
right?
Yeah.
Like we're not supposed to see it. It's
Right,
just
it's not
supposed
like
to
it's
be
in the bedroom.
Hey,
It
remember
just-
this?
Right.
And that's for us as viewers, not for the actor to be reacting to. It's for us as viewers to infer that wow, this is connected because of this. And I mean, I don't know anything else besides that because we're not supposed to.
I feel like I need to know this. Like what the
tie-in.
the tie-in is between Father Merrin, the priest in Iraq and him coming back for the exorcism. Maybe people can write in and tell us.
Please tell us, because
Tell us.
we
Pay attention, you two.
I tried so
This is
hard.
why it's tied in.
Yes,
This is the
please
tie-in.
comment or something,
Yeah.
or send us mail. I don't know. Let us know, because I would like.
We're
to know the tie-in.
confused.
Yeah,
We're also a little drunk.
yeah. We're trying our best here.
Yeah.
We've started and stopped all day. It's okay.
Yes, it's all right.
But yeah, I that really wraps up The Exorcist for me. I've said, you know, I've thought about all I've had to say, and like,
We all know it's one of my favorites.
it's one of Marco's top movies.
Yeah, for sure.
I just think it was well done. The director's cut, especially as someone who's seen more modern movies, looking back as The Exorcism the first time I saw it, it was nice to have the face in there a couple more times.
You love that face.
I do.
He
I
loves
thought
the
that
demon face.
Because it was freaky.
All right.
It came back up, and we
Whatever floats your boat, Zach.
saw. We have a lot of boats to float over here.
Okay, that's one of them. Check the box.
But tune in next
time,
and we're
yes.
covering.
Thrillers. Yeah.
So yes, that's our next topic for next.
Should we leave the movies as a surprise, or should we tell
Absolutely.
people? Okay, I'm not telling them.
Absolutely.
It's Thrillers
All
next
right.
time.
Thank you, horror
Bye.
fans.
Bye.
Bye.